Hi everyone. I'm in a bit of a grump, if I'm honest. I've just been in a group talking about watercolour, and I wasn't actually talking about watercolour, just they were talking about watercolour, and I was getting frustrated, and it wasn't my place. Even though I've been an art teacher for 18 years, it wasn't my place to start giving them lessons. And so I thought I would come and make a video and put it on. And maybe one person will watch this. I don't know, I don't get YouTube. But maybe I can help one person. Watercolour, the clue is in the title. I can't even get my turn. Oh my god, my palette is filthy, look. Water is so important, so I thought I would come on and do a quick video to show you how you should be using watercolour. Yes, there's art, there is no right or wrong. You can do what you want. If you want more control and you want more detail, then I suggest you use pastels or acrylic. I teach I have taught them all. I'm mainly actually painting in watercolour and gouache, because I love the fact that in no other mediums watercolour does its own thing. And I think instead of kind of controlling it, we need to embrace it, understand what it does and why it's doing what it's doing, but then to embrace it. And I think no other mediums really have that like watercolour. So let me demonstrate what I'm meaning. I'll go to my overhead camera. Right, okay, what I have here is some watercolour paper. This one, just to show you, is the Gold Line Studio pads. These are really cheap for the amount of paper you get, 100 sheets. That's why I like it, so that you're not being precious. You're not using an expensive bit of paper that you're going to feel precious about. With watercolour, look at the state of my hands. The key is to really practice and understand how it works. So the first thing you need to do, so these are tubes that I put into pans. I squeeze them in, and then you can use them fresh and top them up if you want lots of paint. Or you can buy them already in pans or half pans. Mine have golden retriever hairs in them as well, adds to the effect. Now, first thing I'm doing is waking my paint up. So this paint is going to be dry, and what we need to do is wake up our sleepy paints. If you can see that okay. So I am literally tickling. You don't need to do it hard because you'll ruin your brush. Mine might look a bit opaque because I use gouache as well in my paintings. But can you see how much paint I am mixing? So 1, waking it up. 2, using the right amount of paint. How much? And as I said in the intro, the clue is in the amount of water. So if we can just play, it will be shiny. I lift that up, does that make a difference? Okay, I don't know if that's going to make a difference. Hopefully that will. It's always a problem with lights in studios. So I'm not going to paint anything in particular in this video. What I'm wanting you to do is to understand watercolour. So this is going to be wet for a certain amount of time. I can drop in other colours and they will still be working, mixing together. You can soften them, so you can kind of move them around. You have a certain amount of time that you can play, well, as I say, they play together over here. We can then soften edges. So if I get some clean water, I can soften. So I clean my brush, take the excess off, and I can soften an edge. So basically what I'm doing is I'm introducing a bit of damp paper over here, and then the paint goes over to it. Now, can you see I have a drip? So drips are useful sometimes. If we were doing a big sky, for example, forget that it's black, I could introduce more paint, and I could introduce more paint. And because my pad is at a slight tilt, gravity is helping it, and then we can fade out to our sky, for an example. What we don't want to do, let me see if I can do it. If I add a load of paint in, as that goes down, this will be partly dry or damp now. So if you imagine, I always think it's like, if you imagine a layer of paint on the paper, so it goes on, I can't get my hands in the right place, it goes on wet and then it goes dry. So if when it's damp, you start introducing paint that is wetter, you'll get what they call a mushroom or a cauliflower. The same will happen if I leave a drip. So see all this paint here? I use my paintbrush like, oh, that was a retriever snoring, like a vacuum cleaner to basically take the excess paint on. If I don't, I'm going to come back in and then I will have a mushroom, because the damp paint and the wet paint, so the wet paint basically flows in to the damp paint and pushes it back. So depending upon how wet that is, I could go in with a more paint condensed, so less water, more paint. I can come on and that damp paint will take it. Okay, if I come on with a watery, really watery, so this is damp, this is water, this is a little bit, you're not going to be able to see it for a while, so I've put that on there to show you as an example. It's going to run down. Let me just tilt my board up. Okay, so what's happening is this really wet paint is going into my damp paint, so it's like half dry, and then it's going to go whoosh and it's going to start pushing this pigment back. You can see it happening already. So what I need to know is that when my paint is damp, I need to put on thicker paint. It's the water that does the lovely effects that we get, but it's the water that also will cause the pigment to push back if it's damp. Now, I'm saying that this is a bad thing. That may be a bad thing in a sky, to have this weird kind of dollop, but actually in kind of plants and greenery and bushes, it actually can look quite nice. Now, second tip is, I don't like what I've done. Now there you go, there's another thing I've just shown at you. If you try and undo what you've done, so we put on that wet paint, I then put more paint on, then I go to lift it off, can you see we go back to the paper, depending on whether it's staining. So what happens is people make the mistake of putting on a too wet piece of paper, then they panic and they try and fix it, and then they don't like that, and so then they try and lift it off and you go back, and then we're in a mess. So the key, let's do one here. So the key is to also keep filling your brush. So what was our point? So the point was lots of paint, lots of water. Let the paint flow. I am very gently, I'm hardly pressing, I'm literally releasing the paint from the well onto the paper like that. And then don't go fiddling, because this is still moving, so this is still wet and that paint is still doing this beautiful effect of moving around. Now, just to confirm what I said here, I can go in with darker paint, say it's darker at the top, lighter, so I could go in, kind of add some darker if you had a cloudy sky. And I can also lift out. So if I clean my brush, take the excess off, if I wanted it to be lighter at the horizon, I use my brush like a vacuum cleaner and I can lift bits out. I could lift bits out of here. And what you're doing as well then is basically drying the paper. You're taking off the excess kind of. I'm not purposely trying to paint something, but I have painted a bit of a cloud there. So if it's doing this tree thing, you know, when it runs in, you can come back and control that to a certain extent. You can lift out and do different things. Even here, this is dry. Well, actually, this is still damp. Can you see I can actually work back into that? So I could, my brush is wet, I could do like a fence post or so I'm lifting out the damp paint, but that'll only happen at a certain kind of stage. So this is still moving, and so I'm embracing it without controlling it too much. I'm doing a little bit of control, but I'm still letting the paint flow. Does that, I hope that that's making sense. Instead of you using a tiny little bit of paint, then you're going back, and by the time you've got your next bit of paint and you're putting it next to it, that's dried, and then you're going to have a hard edge. Okay, and there is the end of my rant for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, let me know in the comments, and I will do more if you would like them. I was just thinking that kind of looked a little bit like a tree, didn't it? See, this is where your like creativity starts going. And then we need to root that in the ground. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. I will speak to you soon. Bye.